Hey guys, it's Anna from Brightling Gardens, and today I wanted to talk to you about growing raspberries in containers or large pots. Believe it or not, raspberries is one of those fruit plants that does exceptionally well in container gardens. This raspberry right here, I potted up last summer early in the season from a bare root plant, and this is halfway through its second season, and as you can see, it's doing exceptionally well in its pot. This is an 8-gallon pot that I have here with drainage holes on the bottom. Today I'm going to review what has been successful for me when growing raspberries in containers and what I put in my potting soil, which is hugely important when it comes to container gardening. So I first wanted to talk to you about some of the important things to know when it comes to container gardening with larger plants like raspberry bushes or blueberry bushes. First and foremost, anything that you plant in a container is going to dry out much faster than it would in the ground. There's simply more soil in the ground to keep the moisture locked in, and in a container, there's a lot more surface area for it to evaporate out of the container. So anytime you're creating a container garden, make sure you have ready access to water, whether that's through a drip line and irrigation system or just having a hose close by. The second thing to keep in mind when you are container gardening is that you are responsible for putting all of the nutrients that would normally be in the ground into this container. This is actually a simple process as long as you know which materials to use. When it comes to growing raspberries, raspberries like a nutrient-dense soil with organic material, and they also like a little bit of acidity. In front of me here, I have one of my custom soil blends that I've blended up specifically for our raspberry plants. I have decomposed mulch and pine needles. There's some perlite in here for drainage. I have your typical garden soil, a little bit of topsoil, and of course, something that we have abundantly here in northern Michigan, sand. There are a couple key ingredients that I'm still going to add to my pots to make sure that my raspberry plants are successful. The first is going to be an organic peat moss blend. This is our Espoma Organics brand. If you've been following our channel, you know how much I love this brand. They're completely organic. Their peat moss is really light and fluffy. And peat moss also adds a really nice acidity to the soil that blueberries and raspberries love. Once I have my plant all potted up and it starts to sprout, I'm going to add fertilizer. I did not used to like fertilizer. It freaked me out. I grew native plants. A lot of times they didn't need it. But one thing I've discovered is when it comes to any plant that fruits or produces a vegetable, you want to make sure that you are fertilizing the plant so you can have a higher yield when it comes to harvest. We use the Espoma Organics Berry Tone. We use it on our strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, anything that ends in berry, we use this on. If possible, when you are container gardening with raspberries, I always recommend starting with a bare root plant. Bare root plants tend to establish themselves better in new environments, and when it comes to container gardening, a bare root plant will set up better in a pot than an already sprouted plant will. This is an example of a bare root plant that I have. We do get these rootstock on our own. I know they're a high quality rootstock. I work with them every day, so I know that this guy is going to be successful. As you can see, he already has just a couple sprouts coming off there, so he is really ready to be potted. Now, just a disclaimer, for the purposes of this video, I did choose a 2-gallon pot. It was just a little easier to work with for this video. When you are planning your container garden, I don't recommend selecting anything under a 5-gallon, and something between 8 to 10 gallons is actually going to be much better for your raspberry plant, and you won't have to transplant it in the coming years. Blend all your soil ingredients in a separate container before you put them into the pot. You want to make sure you have a really even blend before you pot up your raspberry plant. Once your soil blend is complete, you can go ahead and start filling your pot. For this raspberry plant here, I want the soil level to come about 1.5 inches to 2 inches above where that root line is. So I want my soil to come to about here. I've filled my pot about halfway up with soil. My rootstock will go on top, and I'm going to gently fill in the soil around the roots. Under no circumstances do I want to pack the soil in around the roots because that would interrupt the flow of oxygen to the root mass. My root is seated nicely into the soil in my pot. It's in there firmly, it won't wiggle around, but I haven't packed that soil down around the roots. Now, if you're working with a dormant plant like this, there's nothing else to do at this point. Make sure you're keeping the soil moist, water it daily. If it's a 90-degree day like it's going to be today in northern Michigan, make sure you're watering it twice a day and just keep an eye on it. Once you start to see foliage start to sprout all the way up and down the stem of that plant, then you know it's time to fertilize. If you fertilize before the growth begins, you run the risk of burning the roots. This guy is more than ready to be fertilized, so I'm going to show you how to fertilize him. The Espoma Baritone fertilizer that I'm going to use is a granular fertilizer. It comes in little pebbles or a gravel-like substance like this, and it gradually breaks down into the soil with every watering. The reason I prefer granular fertilizer to a liquid fertilizer is it's just much harder to overdose the plant and burn the roots. The granular fertilizer will just go along the surface of the soil. I just sprinkled the granular fertilizer around the edge of the pot, being sure that I don't touch the stem with it. After this, I want to make sure this guy gets a really thorough watering, and for the next several days, I want to make sure I'm doing a daily watering on him as well. Container gardening with raspberries can be a highly rewarding experience that results in fruit production for years to come. I highly recommend giving this a try if you are new to container gardening. If you have any questions about today's video or any questions about growing berry plants in general, please leave them in the comments below. And if you liked what you saw here, please take the time to subscribe to our channel. It really helps out small businesses like ours. Thanks so much for tuning in.